Alright guys, Dashy here back again today. Hope you're all enjoying your Tuesday. Today we've got to talk about OpTic Gaming and this team which was built to be such a strong lineup at the start of the season that has failed to win a single series so far here in the CDL. Yes, they have lost to very competent teams. At the same time, this is a team that you're not expecting to ever have to be in this position given the names on this lineup. What exactly can they do going forwards? What would you guys do if you were the general manager, MattG in this case, in charge of the team going forwards? Would you give them time? Would you make changes now? The next event that they're going to be participating at is only 2 weeks away in Los Angeles versus, first up, the Los Angeles Gorillas, which is of course OpTic Gaming and Los Angeles Gorillas being Aches and Aches versus OpTic Gaming, that long time rivalry. Let's get into the video. Like if you guys enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate your insight down in the comment section below as well. Very interesting topic because I'm sure something has got to happen with this team going forward, and a couple of things have already happened which we'll go through in the coming minutes. First of all, Suckery, Nasty and Linny have left. Train hard, some European amateur intel for you guys. Also, the overall peak at the event, 112,000. Really interesting that, again, Atlanta, Minnesota, 100,000 views is impressive. Usually, we see the Chicago games are the ones that are at the top. This time, there's actually 2 games that aren't Chicago in the top, the top few, even though I guess Chicago only played 3 series. So I guess that has to be the case. But regardless, still pretty impressive viewership. Interesting to see that there was no grand finals viewership in here because it dropped off significantly to my understanding. I think part of the reason for that is because they put the hype battle on, which it isn't a huge hype moment for a lot of people. So I think that drove some people away. Unfortunately, the grand finals fell short, but still decent viewership on the whole. Also, just wanted to run this past you guys. Treyarch Studios, congrats FaZe on winning the Atlanta home series. See you in LA. And as Crane at CDL Intel says, Treyarch tweeting about CDL more than Infinity Ward. It's not even Treyarch's game, but yet this is what we're seeing from them. Just disappointing to see. So let's get on to this OpTic Gaming stuff. This is a really hilarious tweet I saw yesterday that I'll play on screen for you guys now. OpTic Gaming comms during a listen-in. Effectively cut and pasting some comms that I think we saw in a clip that went up on maybe Reddit a month or so ago onto over their listening here, and it honestly works really well.
Send it over to an OpTic Gaming listening, presented by Astro Gaming.
I'll be a captain, no bullshit.
I just lost school, bro. I'm getting off.
Yo, Tej is here? Yeah, I got Tej.
Nah.
Yo, I'm not fucking bailing on the mission, bro.
Oh, you should not have played these guys, bro.
Yo, I agree with Tej. I'm losing fucking full, bro. Like.
So, these are the current standings in the CDL points presented by Mountain Dew Amp Game Fuel. Here are OpTic Gaming down in last place at 0 points. Not a single match won yet. 2 events played, so I guess you could say they're in a slightly better position than Toronto are. We're having played 3 events, but still only got 10 points. But regardless, they're bottom of the league. Not what I was expecting. When this team was first announced, I was like, this team on paper should be like a top 3 team in the game. Something like that. Right up there with the Chicago team that we all thought was going to be pretty good. And then FaZe and Empire were kind of, on the balance when the team was first announced. Not 100% sure which way it was going to go. I thought OpTic Gaming would be up there with those teams. So far this season, we haven't seen that at all. It's you probably have to say right now, OpTic Gaming are the worst team in the entire league. It's difficult to argue otherwise, given the performances so far. You probably can argue otherwise, but there's definitely a contention that they are the worst team in the league, which is remarkable and really means that they have to do something about it. These are the matches that they have lost so fast. They lost to Paris Legion first of all 3-2, then they got 3 by the Huntsman. That was the end of their Minnesota. Didn't travel to London, and then the Atlanta FaZe home series get 3-0 by them, then 3-1 to the Mutineers. Really close series this, and of course as I mentioned yesterday, Mutineers versus FaZe, they ended up matching up in the grand finals of that event. So OpTic Gaming Los Angeles losing to pretty good teams, right? Like if we'd have seen OpTic Gaming LA against like an LAG or something, we might have a different story to tell, given that you could argue, let's have a look at this again. Paris are up in 3rd in the league standings. Like the 4 teams they have lost to are the top 4 teams in the league. Part of the reason of that is because they've beaten OGLA, so they've got the points, I guess you could say. But at the same time, they're losing to good teams, which may be, MattG and Pac-Man and those guys are thinking, okay, like, is this actually as big of a deal as a lot of people are making out? Especially given the expectations for this team, I would say it kind of is. And this is a tweet that went out yesterday from CDL Intel, sitting last on the standings with a 3-12 map count. Where do OpTic Gaming go from here? stick together, make a trade, sub in Chino or Gunjar, sign an amateur and bench someone. Now, I voted for this initially. I kind of changed my mind on it, given that the next event they're going to be competing is only 2 weeks away. But I do think that long term, this may be the solution, because I don't think it is a solution that a lot of other teams are going to go for. It might be a very valuable one, because there's a lot of really great amateur players out there right now, and there's a lot of players in this OpTic gaming team which are significantly underperforming where they should be. And the worry is, for me, if I'm OpTic, and I think you do see this with a lot of other teams throughout the league, that the substitutes need to be pushing the pro team to, you know, keep their standards as high as possible. That's what you see with some of the teams like Seattle, for example, Panda and Proto. Panda coming in for a neighbor. They're keeping the pros on their toes, as it were, and Toronto definitely have that to the same degree, right? They have 10 players, substitutes are always vying for a spot, which means that the guys on the main team have to keep on grinding. You could get dropped at any point, which is great in terms of, you know, motivation. Whereas you look at the OpTic gaming team, you got Chino and Gunjar. You know, these aren't players that are going to be subbing in for your TJ, your Kenny, those players. Like Chino and Gunjar, both ARs. I understand the thought process from OpTic saying that, look, if there's a trade we're going to make at some point, let's just have a look at their team right here. It's going to be for JCap. Like, you would imagine it would be for JCap if they were going to make a change throughout the season. And of course, yeah, I guess you can say, okay, we'll sub in Chino, sub in Gunjar, like more AR type players to replace JCap, who's typically going to be in that role alongside a slasher, I suppose. Which is an understandable thought process. But the problem is, it gives no incentive for TJ and, you know, Kenny, for example. I keep calling him Kenny, even though it says Quavo here. Technically, that's what he wants to be called by. I don't like it. But I guess I'll probably get used to it eventually. But regardless, you can't sub in, you know, Chino for TJ, or you can't sub in Gunjar for TJ. That doesn't work, especially in the meta right now. Which means that, you know, TJ isn't being pressured from behind to keep up his game. He's got the paycheck sorted. Yeah, he doesn't have to worry about getting dropped in a sense. Which is why I think maybe teams should have thought differently about their substitutes and also potentially pick up amateur players. That is something that I do think consider is a good idea. Have here from Chris, pick up F3, so that's Pharaoh. Of course, honestly, a fantastically talented player. We know Pharaoh is controversial, right? He's had controversial things happen to him in the past. I think even Kenny was the target of that kind of famous clip that ran around, infamous is the better word, with Pharaoh in. But of course, you know, he was on that 100 Thieves team last season, right at the start of it. He's won a championship on Team Caliber in the World War II season. He was dropped, of course, for Priester last season. Wasn't performing particularly well, but he's shown some great promise in the amateur side this game. And he can play at a fast pace. And we have seen some changes come into play. So let's just look at this real quick. This is the next tournament they're going to be playing. LAG versus OpTic to start things off. They're in Group A alongside Rocker and Seattle. So if they win that, they might play Rocker. Will they win that? Unlikely, but, you know, who knows? If they do make it out of the group, they'll probably be playing Atlanta or Dallas, which, you know, isn't a pretty situation, but it's possible OGLA could get some action out of this series. Of course, that's their home stand as well. So this is what's happened so far on what OpTic Gaming, the changes they have made so far, and that is Dashy going to an SMG. And I think this is a good change. What was happening, you know, right now is that Dashy was effectively the main AR for the team, and you had Slasher in a more aggressive sub role. That just doesn't work to me. It makes much more sense to have Slasher on your main AR. If you're going to have a 4 SMG, 1 AR meta, it's Slasher that should be on the AR, especially in terms of his role within the team, in terms of his personality and, you know, what he brings outside of the table. It makes sense. It always has made sense for him to play that, you know, assault rifle role. And he's always been a very aggressive AR as well. So it's not like he's going to be lagging behind and playing super passive. He's going to be a pretty aggressive AR as well. And it's why I guess I understand the thought process of maybe having him on the SMG initially and Dashy on the AR. I don't think that works. I think Slasher needs to get back to his groove. He's been underperforming the first couple of events. Makes sense. Get him on the AR back again. Get Dashy, who's always been a more aggressive type of player anyway. He's, you know, one of these cracked out young kids, even though he's used an AR for most of his time in Call of Duty. He can definitely make it work with an SMG. There's no question of doubt. We know how talented Dashy is for sure. Him on the SMG, up there with TJ and Kenny, Quavo, I guess makes sense. JCap's in a little bit of a weird middle ground right now. And, you know, so these are the KDs, right? Let's have a look at these real quick. Atlanta overall KD ratios for OpTic Gaming. Dashy at a 1.08. Of course, he did have the AR, so you see a lot of AR players topping the standing, so kind of makes sense. At the same time, though, a lot of people saying, like, free Dashy, because look at these other KDs. 0.81, 0.81, 0.88, 0.74. Not pretty at all. And these are KDs you're not expecting. Like, out of JCap, this is understandable. the rest of these guys, this is not characteristic at all. Like, and especially out of these three, there isn't really any other way to put it. Slasher, you always see him as a higher KD than this, but I guess he's kind of using a role that's out of his comfort zone. So I can imagine with some role changes, I can see that improving the team on the whole. However, TJ and Kenny, to be honest, is kind of inexcusable given where they've been in previous seasons. And TJ especially has had multiple just dreadful maps where he's nowhere near his level that you would expect to see in previous seasons. So the question is really, these are Lion Man's cards from the Atlanta home series that we can just have a look through here real quick. The numbers are not great by any means. Dashy with a poor S&D KD, but just about holding it together in the other modes. And, TJ down here, 0.7, 0.8, 0.77. Like, at least Kenny was, doing kind of solid in the search and destroy at the very least. But, yeah, really some poor performances on the whole. Like, if JCab is outperforming you, kind of, if you're Kenny and Dashy, although if you're Kenny and TJ, that's not a great sign, right? So, yeah, issues for this team for sure. I really am intrigued to hear which direction you think these should take. Because, yes, you could say, let's just leave it. Let's just give it a little bit of time to come around and get back to the groove. Which maybe might work, right? There's so much talent on this team, you would imagine they get it together eventually, which is what a lot of people have been saying. However, had a couple of events now. They had that Florida, series, which really, especially given that Florida had just lost to the London Royal Ravens, you would have expected them to put up I guess they did put up a decent fight, but at the same time, the stats just aren't great, and from what you're expecting on paper from this team, should be a lot better. Like some key underperformances. I don't really want to give Slasher a pass, but I do think that the role situation may have been an issue here. But as I say, Kenny and TJ, like, it's tough to come up with excuses for these guys playing at this poor of a level, especially against competition where TJ, you'd expect him to be pretty good against a team like Atlanta FaZe in terms of keeping up with their pace and matching some of their high tier SMG players. He couldn't get anywhere close to it, right? And objective wise, he's doing fantastic, but nowhere near in all the other facets. So do you leave it? Do you leave it for Los Angeles and just say, look, give them one more tournament, see how it goes with this role change? I think that is the way to go. It's only a couple of weeks away. You can't really make a substitute change this quick. However, if that event doesn't go to plan, what's your plan? Because, are you going to sub in Chino or Guja? Who are you going to sub them in for? JCap? Like, how is that going to affect the overall aspect of the team when it's, Kenny, Slasher, and TJ that are underperforming what you would expect? And you don't have a good substitute to sub in for these guys. As I said earlier in the video, you don't have anyone on the bench pushing Kenny and pushing TJ to be at the, the highest point of their game. And I imaginably, they have kind of dropped in terms of their effort levels and their commitment. That's what I imagine, because if they haven't, you wouldn't expect these kind of performances. If a guy as talented as Kenny and TJ are grinding day in, day out, like a guy like Simp is, they wouldn't be having these performances in my estimation. But, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they just had a couple of off tournaments. Plausible. But, if this tournament doesn't go to plan, things have got to change. And in my opinion, you're not going to get that change for the substitute bench. You bring in Chino or Goon, you're not making this team championship contending by any means, unless they can somehow get more mileage out of Kenny and TJ, especially those are your key SMG players that you need to be leading the lines, especially to compete in this meta that we have right now. If JCap can't get that action out of them, you're definitely not getting that action, I imagine, out of Chino or Goonjar, which means you really need to be looking at a guy like Pharaoh or some of the amateur players to come in and reinvigorate this team. Because that 100 Thieves squad of last season, they switched it up when they brought in Priester, when they made that roster change, and everything then went uphill from there. Yes, they were subbing out Pharaoh in that instance. Who knows whether Pharaoh coming into this team could be the way to go, but there is some controversy involved there. Really intrigued to hear your thoughts down below. If I was MattG, what do? I guess I just leave it to the next event, and then after that, I'm heavily considering options. Thanks for watching as always. Like if you guys enjoyed, I would greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.